Today is Monday, April 22nd, 2024, 1 o'clock, and it is a meeting of Senate Natural Resources and Energy. Thank you to everyone who's come in on a Monday. We are closing in on the end of session and trying to buy ourselves more time by working together in committee and a formal meeting on Monday. We're here to take some more testimony on H 289. And then finish discussions with council. And I'm anticipating that by the time we finish that work, we'll be ready to vote. So with that, let's, our first guest, someone I've known for a long time from home, David Glittersdorf. So Mr. Glittersdorf, welcome. We've been having a slow motion correspondence for like 2 or 3 months about this while it's been while it's been going by.
Okay.
While it's been cooking on the house side. So it's good to finally be in the same room, same time, same place. So we can hear from you directly about you. So the floor is yours. We're aiming to have roughly 10 minutes of testimony from folks. We can get a little Q&A time and hear from you and Mr. Atchison, and what's mine?
Great. Well, thank you for having me here today. Hopefully I won't eat up all that 10 minutes of time. I timed my little talk here and you already have the transcripts of sent forward. What I'm going to talk about should be pretty quick, like 3 or 4 minutes, and plenty of time for questions. I'm sure there's going to be questions. I hope there's some questions.
I already had some. The private pump, that's the case.
So, again, thank you for the chance to testify today. You know, I know your time is short. You want to get this bill moving. I also know that months of work has gone into this agreement between the environmental and climate nonprofits and the utility companies. Actually, I was never involved in any of those, so there was other people that put this together.
I can't remember, sorry to interrupt. I can't remember, did you call in at all when Senator Watson and I were 2 of 4 legislators on that working group that ran last summer and fall? And honestly, we saw a lot of people. I don't know if you ever came.
No, it was handled by everybody else.
Okay.
First thing, the goal of this bill is a very good thing. Our laws need this update, but this bill has a major flaw that hurts Vermonters' ability to participate in developing and benefiting from solar energy in our state. So a little bit of background. I spent my entire 40-year career creating and developing renewable energy businesses, all in Vermont, to really fight climate change and depletion of fossil fuels. I started and grew NRG Systems to be the world leader in wind energy measurement systems. And to this day, it's still in Heinsberg, Vermont, owned by a publicly traded company. So they're still going strong.
The first facility of yours I remember was a little building pretty close to Charlotte Central School. Yeah.
No, we're over right in town.
Did you now start out?
Oh, yeah, you're right. Exactly. Yeah. It was in a rented house.
Yeah.
In our basement, basically. But yeah, we've been always in Vermont. I built a wind farm in Milton, Georgia, Vermont, that leads about 10% of Burlington's electricity. So I got to do that after I sold NRG. And I also built another one in Russell, Massachusetts, about 8 years ago, and sold that. I endowed a chair at UVM to work on renewable energy and funded the renewable energy degree program at Vermont Tech. Really wanted to get other people to learn about renewables and train them for what I consider a big future. I also founded All Earth Renewables, my companies today, to build basically community-based and home-based, business-based 2-axis trackers that are more efficient than ground mounts and roofs. But that's my little niche now. I strongly believe that we need to electrify everything. we can, everything. And I think, most of you understand that as we transition off fossil fuels. It's great to have the goal, but it's more important to get it done. That's what we're here for, getting it done. Goals are great, but you can see what happens with goals. Eliminating group net metering as you propose, well, the House has proposed and you're debating, threatens Vermont energy jobs and our homegrown solar industry. It's been a huge success of what we did with the original laws, net metering, group net metering, virtual net metering, registration. They were all huge and very leading in the United States. No other state has a registration program. They're all permitting programs. And when I sold the idea to the legislature, I said, well, how would you like to buy a car but have to go through a 6-month process of getting a permit for it? So then I wouldn't sell it. So registration was key. And the big question, group net metering helps Vermonters do the right thing. Why would we take it away in one fell swoop? That's the big question. It is especially powerful for towns, schools, affordable housing developments, small businesses, and others who don't have enough roof space for their own solar panels. And I hope you've heard testimony from schools and nonprofits. You'll probably hear some more today about how it would hurt their efforts to power their living and education facilities. If we're going to build all this new housing, shouldn't it be powered by community solar? These are community solar projects at work, and I've developed a lot of them myself. Other people have developed them, and one of the key things is that it's private capital, and my business only finances about half of the project costs through local banks. I won't deal with the banks that are national or international. I only go to local banks. So local money through Northfield Savings Bank and others are funding these. So you're bringing all that capital in, and it's state money that it stays here. You may not know this, but the threat of group net metering elimination has affected driving solar companies like mine to Maine, New Hampshire, New York, where actually New Hampshire is just passing a law that makes it easier and community solar is going to work when before they didn't allow it. So they're doing exactly opposite of what we're trying to do. And why would we do that? Why would we incentivize community solar companies to move? I don't want to cut my payroll. I don't want to move. And I just built a new building, assuming we were going to grow our solar business in Vermont. Right now, our solar installation business is about half of our revenue. And I'm adding employees, assuming that we're going to continue growing. We're going from about 20 people. We're adding 5 more now. We're going to add another 5 more in the next year. But we're at risk.
Can I ask a quick question, make sure I understood? So about half your business is solar or half your business is group net meter solar?
Solar in Vermont, all of our business now is net meter solar in Vermont. So that's half our business. In the early days, I put in the first 2 large standard offer projects for Joe Larkin, both 2.2 megawatts. So we built our business based on volume of our new product, our solar tractor, with those early successes. But we haven't done standard offer stuff in many, many years. It's always net metering. As you know, group net metering allows Vermont solar companies to build solar projects elsewhere in the state and sell the energy at a discount. Again, I own $24 million worth of solar projects in the state. And so we sell that power to people that can't do solar on their own place. UVM, Middlebury College, Stark Squirrel School. All these people get a discounted price on their solar. And typically for us, it's about 10%. And they get a land lease too. So that's another 5%. So they save money. The transformation of renewable energy requires us to build all sorts of different projects. We gotta do roofs, we gotta do other land, we gotta do other group net metering projects. There's not enough roof space. I calculated it's about 4% of our need for solar is gonna be on roofs. That's it. You have to build a lot of capacity. There's a low capacity factor of solar to generate the megawatt hours you need. And on the final questions, are we really going to depend on the utilities to develop these projects and believe the projections for buying energy from offshore wind farms and nuclear plants to meet our goal? I don't think so. They don't have the tax appetite, they don't have the capital. We're bringing extra capital in, and some of this capital is coming from out of state. So why not take this capital and do it ourselves? So in conclusion, H289 takes away one of our most successful programs and replaces it right now with nothing. We're in a huge dilemma if that happens. I don't have a future if there's nothing to replace it, along with a lot of people that are going to move their business out of state. Thank you.
So I was just hearing an update today about the national federal solar for all project. I think sending Vermont like way 62 million dollars. Is that tranche of money create opportunities for all Earth to participate in solar projects? Maybe not necessarily group net meter, but will there be other opportunities for you to sell into that space?
Well, when I looked at the IRA bill and all the different pieces of there's some pieces that could work, but they're problematic. And the Biden administration is really trying to get some of these things in place really soon. And I'm not really sure on that if it can have a positive effect or not. We have extra bonuses for manufacturing in the United States on the tax credits, 10%. That doesn't work because of the low cost of getting panels out of China and Vietnam. There's extra incentives for old brownfields from fossil fuels. That doesn't work here. And there's a census that said there's a possibility of one place in Maine that could qualify. But Vermont doesn't qualify for any extra incentives.
Does it, I don't know the program well enough, does it include, and do you ever sell into the space of parking lot solar? You know, you've probably heard this 1,000 times, the way we have them. Why aren't we using parking lots more? And the basic thing I've heard so far is it's significantly more expensive than greenfield construction. So you're gonna do greenfield construction while you work. That's still,
We have
to
to
be that way.
maximize, covering some parking lots, but I'm not a big believer that a car is gonna be our savior anyway, so. But whatever's there, don't create more parking lots just to put a canopy on to put solar on. That's kind of a backward way to look at it. But we have to maximize that. We have to maximize every roof. But when you look at all the roofs, trees, they're pointed the wrong ways. And what disturbs me is that we're being forced to putting stuff on roofs that people are selling to the north side of roofs. They said, what are you doing? They're maximizing their tax credits, they're doing that, and the customer needs that little bit of extra power, but it's really not an effective way to use your solar panels. So the projects we're talking about, we typically do 150 kilowatts because the permitting is different than the 500, and you can do single phase power. You don't need 3-phase power. It only eats up 1 acre of land. So we're looking at the edges of prime ag and other places to do that.
The provisions the bill talks about co-located generation. Does that what sort of opportunity do you see in that space for sited at load?
It is tough to do. It's tough enough to basically get off-takers for the GPAs and sell the power. But having the ability to go anywhere in the utility makes it work for us. Because we can't spend the time to find the big load on site or adjacent to it. There's not a lot of them. One of our customers is Vermont Smoke and Cure in Heinsberg. They're getting power from Marshfield, they're getting power from other places. Totally impossible to do.
And last quick question is, one of the concerns we end up hearing is that because utilities are obligated to buy net meter power, and because it's less than wholesale power with significant comparable environmental attributes, that there is it's a cost driver to the system as a whole. I know that each project probably is an infinitesimal cost driver. But on just the level of when a school reduces its costs by having a solar array, but then ratepayers for that system end up paying a tiny fraction more. How do you read that's, you might say, that's not good math. So if that's the case, I won't figure that. But I've heard that enough that I'm just checking in with you. And the question becomes, to what degree do you want to reduce a school cost? Could come back out in an education bill, but then the same people in that town will see a slightly higher rate. And then adjoining towns of the same utility will actually end up sort of cross subsidizing that school. So that's a troubling sort of scenario to be in. And I think one of the things we're wrestling with is to figure out, that's why there's follow-on action anticipated by the bill, to try to get us out of that robbing Peter to pay Paul thing that he said.
Yeah, that issue is all across the United States, California, everybody's,
Yeah.
But I don't believe the math is right, and I don't believe the social good is right. And the amount of solar generated under group net metering in Vermont is tiny. So why are you going after maybe a 0.25% rate impact when the utilities have bigger problems? They have a horrible old system. They're trying to rebuild their substations. They need to rebuild their distribution lines. Those are the rate impacts that are going to show up. There's probably $1 billion a year in electric infrastructure and growing renewables that has to happen. Nobody wants to talk about that.
Sure. We have heard something about that,
but that's the long term of what we're looking at that has to be done.
Okay, well, I get it. It's not the only cost driver, but I know, and unfortunately, no one has brought forth math to help us see a comparative analysis of that suggests maybe it actually alternative math help us better see that picture.
Yeah. Well,
We have asked
one
for
comment.
years, like, could we see the value stack on solar generation, for instance?
Yeah, I have a place down in Wellfleet, and the cottage, I pay 28 cents a kilowatt hour for electricity down there. I buy green power at 14 cents. The other 14 cents, at least the utility by Massachusetts law breaks it all down. Here's your distribution cost. Here's your overhead cost of utility. Here's your transmission. Here's everything else. We don't get that.
Sure.
That's part of the math.
We never deregulated, right?
Yeah, right.
And which has its own pluses and minuses, like Texas.
Yeah.
And an ice storm. Okay, Senator White.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You have articulated, I think, all of the major points that I've been reiterating in this committee for the last 3 days that we've had this bill, which has been a very short period of time. And I think I'm trying to be diplomatic in how I ask this. We are not likely to make changes to the bill because of the timeline that we have with receiving it and our need to move forward. At this point, I am comfortable with the bill as it stands because it moves us much further than we were to get certain, and I think you said it before we went on air, to hit certain goals. And all those, although they are goals and not there yet, I'm still comfortable with the compromises that we landed with. So my question would be to you. Let's say you knew for sure we weren't gonna make changes. What would you suggest we do as legislators? Knowing that.
Well-
What should we be asking of our utility companies to hold them accountable as as the changes already envisioned in the bill roll out? And are there things that we can change or look at next year that you would want us to? Because at this point, I think we do not have the ability to make the things that you have noted changed in the bill.
Okay, all I wanna do is delete one thing.
Okay,
It's not changing it, it's deleting one thing. There's 2 paragraphs in that bill, just delete all reference to net metering, period. Done.
that's a great suggestion.
It's not a change.
Yeah.
So if we were, because of the way that I
Oh,
love,
no,
I-
I know what you're getting at. So what is the compromise? What is the way we could get out of this? Well. There's another change, just delay anything to do with the net metering by 1 year, because to come out and say, we're gonna eliminate a program and then wait for the study to show up in January. I said, are you kidding? You have nothing to replace this. And that is I look at that as government risk. I said, don't do this, because that's like going backwards on things. And so that is really harmful to business, because all that does is delays us, and I'm gonna have to go and make a business decision, just like everybody else, and we're out of here. And you're gonna see solar drop like crazy.
what we've heard is that we have a delay now of a year in the bill. If I'm correct, and what we've heard,
Grandfathered until December 31st of this year.
oh, is it this year? I thought it was 2025, cause I thought we
And
could
then-
come back and make a change, that
Then
was one of
if
the.
you're an off taker, if the project is
Under permitting, so.
for the permitting and housing related, that you can still bring those applications for an additional year.
Yes, so what I've heard is that even though we may, and this is important for me on how I feel about the bill, so. I was told that if we wanted to, next year, we would have the time during the legislature to make changes. To this part,
If you added 1 year to your timeline, so that we don't have to have a permit in place by December 31st. That would be fine. That gives you the time to go look at the new study, it gives you time to put something through the next session. Then we're okay, but you can't, if you stop. It's what the IRA bill did on a national level. I grew up in the wind energy business from 82 on, where it was start and stop. And that's why wind energy took a long time to get going. And then you can't keep doing this.
Last question to you, Senator
Okay,
Crowley.
then continuing that line of reasoning. Won't uncertainty undermine your activities?
Oh,
So the idea that we're not doing it to you, but we're putting you on notice that tonight,
Yeah,
that's not a very comfortable place to way to do business.
no, it's not comfortable at all, but as a business person. I take probably higher risks than some people do, because I believe in Vermont and I was very involved in creating all these laws and rules. And so I think we can do the right thing, but it may be a couple weeks, maybe I'll change my mind.
Mhm.
And that would be hard.
Senator Watson?
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify, the deadline I have, that as I'm seeing it, is December 31st, 2025.
Yeah,
Is that what it is?
That's what I,
That didn't come out of the house out.
Yes,
that's-
we're.
I mean, I'm on page 4.
So there's more than one line down.
Yeah.
In the bill.
Maybe, I mean, maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, no,
Would like to be
that's-
wrong, I do.
So we're
one digit.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
east sub little I, you know, of course, this is complete application December 31st of 24.
Or exception.
And that's for, you know. Except for systems that will,
Adjacent.
right, be adjacent or co-located generation. For system, and then we go, the low income unit is December 25.
Oh,
So
so
there-
income. See, that really doesn't help much. You're gonna talk to low end.
Yeah, so we all, you know, so like the schools and those systems, or like a church that group that meters, they would not be able to do it. They would end 2024, but a multifamily housing unit with affordable housing would. Yeah. I see what you're saying, but you're suggesting a change from the first.
Line of both
But
of those.
you can, so in the case of a church, you could design. Guessing to make sure we're not creating a misimpression. If I'm misunderstanding them, I'm sure you'll be able to help me out.
I don't know.
If that church's load requires 32 kilowatts of generation, then they can net meter for themselves.
On their property or on their neighbor's property.
Yeah,
But what if they are like my church where they don't have adjacent property? And they don't have a good roof, and they have steeple. They would not be able to
then
go solar.
Just an example, in Heinsberg,
Yeah.
we have 2 tractors at the church, so they provide the power for their church. They own a parcel of land down the street next to the school. We are putting in under permitting right now, we're trying to get the permit in rushed in. If you pass this law, it wouldn't be allowed to have it that far away.
Yeah,
right, and I get the discomfort of seeing us take, you cross a brook, when you step from one side to the other. It's like, you figure you're gonna make it across, but you could get wet, so. I'd say right now, we're crossing a brook and we're planning on not getting wet,
It's
so
more
we're
than
back.
this.
we could move.
All right, any other questions from Mr. Blair, or?
It's not a question of which is a committee discussion. I have never understood why did this in the first place.
When we, so let's finish with our witnesses and then we'll have a chance to decide with council, I think a pretty good chunk of time for community discussion, so. All right, it's always good to see you, thank you for your work, Senator McDonald, do you have something you want to?
I have a couple things, and we're constantly being told that we ought to be doing stuff on parking lots. Yeah, Mr. Buddisdorf has said, parking lots, so he said politely, you guys nuts. We don't. We don't have enough roofs. And that sort of puts in perspective what we're looking at. The amount of roofs in the state of Vermont are inadequate for the solar that could be used. And we're sitting here telling ourselves on occasion, or being told by witnesses, that, oh, we ought to do it on parking lots.
We're going to do that too. No one's saying do it one thing instead of.
It is a constant, you keep hearing parking lots come up as if that were somehow a solution rather than a wise accommodation as long as it's parking. Okay.
I think we supported it as a preferred location. And which has financial implications, because we said, who likes a parking lot? Well, not many people, could you at least turn them to a space that, in addition to providing parking, I also provide them, I think. There's a common, it's easy enough to say, I think the economics of it cut against it, and so we haven't seen.
Well, the other thing on the registration program, roofs, you can register up to 500 kilowatts, and parking canopies have the same rule, so it's simple permitting. We're going through permitting, it's gonna take 6 to 9 months, and that's, you're already preferred on parking lots.
So who, it's, some of the stuff we did with preferred locations was an experiment, right? Like, could by naming landfills, gravel pits, brown fields, like, could we provide spaces that would generally be acceptable? And it's a good place to develop.
But they're not gonna move us forward in any meaningful way. To you using those spaces is wise. Even if you have to put in posts that are 4 times strong in a parking lot to make up for it, back it out, and water shattering your solar panels.
And if you don't mind, one final comment on this is I was involved in figuring out the standard offer program. It's supposed to be on feed in tariff. And I remember sitting in the conference room when we were talking about it at GMP, and I arrived late, I was driving up. And GMP at the time was proposing, we need preferred spots for solar in the state of Vermont. And I think it's about the whole state's preferred spot. What are we talking about there? Because you need a lot of solar in.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That will go to Mr. Atchison. Thank you for coming back, and there goes your mic. Here's your video, looking good. You look like you're in air traffic control land. We're ready to be landed here.
Okay, great. Thank you for inviting me. And I appreciate the hospitality of Senators Bray, Watson, Cormick, and Mark, and Becca. And some of you I've worked before personally, you know, in your past careers with Efficiency Vermont and me as an energy coordinator. So I feel like I'm among friends today. I'm also among ordinary citizens, which we all are, you know, with a big problem on our planet. I'd like to celebrate that today is Earth Day, a beautiful solar day here in Plainfield, and in all this amid the imminence of climate chaos. And I realize the importance of your work to streamline this bill process adaptation, and to together hope that we can do it once and get it right. So just a little bit on me. I probably became interested in the environment first in the 70s with Rachel Carson and reading her book Silent Spring and the harmful effects of DDT, etc. I continued later, after I got out of school, continued to be an educator in vocational education. So I was doing the wrong thing at that point because I was teaching auto technology. But at the same time, there were kinks in that line of work because there was oil embargoes that came down the road. So later on, I authored Act 5270, which is demand side, treating power on the demand side rather than on production side. That was for the SEOO. And as part of that work, I was certified as an energy auditor in a new role as the state energy and weatherization tech. I've taken NABCEP training as an installer of small wind and solar. And lastly, in my career, I worked in general engineering and as a project coordinator for VTrans for 19 years and did COVID work for the Department of Health as a case investigator for the last few months of my career with the state. I've been Plainfield Energy Coordinator 20 years, and we've done some projects there, including solar, street lighting, vehicle charging, and weatherization. So, as a solar consultant, in New Hampshire, and presently I organize with Declare Emergency in Washington, D.C., and in Vermont with Stop Vermont Biomass, 350 Vermont, and XR Northeast Regional. So, I'm not going to
Let me interrupt.
give you the statistics. Those are
all those years and ongoing work on behalf of our state.
Oh. See, no, I don't think so.
That didn't freeze.
Hey, Bob.
And more.
yeah.
I
Do you want me?
don't know if you can hear. I just said, thank you for your work on behalf of our state, all those years on all those projects. Glad
Okay, thank you.
you.
My apologies. My audio is a little hard here. I don't know if it's your mics or my headset, but I didn't quite understand you, so I'll continue. Um, you may be familiar with Secretary General Anthony Guterres, who says, that we're on the highway to climate hell and our foot is still on the accelerator. There's just such an imminence here of needing to deal with this problem. And just 2 weeks ago, Dr. James Hansen came out with saying that this is just really increasing exponentially, and we really have to think seriously about doing it because we'll reach a tipping point where we can't go back from it. So there's some desperation here, and I don't know. It's one of those things where you remember when we had Irene hit our state, we found ways to do things in a hurry, but did them right at the same time. So I think that's what's called for in this legislation. Yes, we need renewables. Yes, we need to incentivize renewables. Yes, we need to share as a community, as a state, as a government, and be able to tolerate the fact that these are different times. And we really need to take stock of what we can do and just get on the job and do it. I'm a member of WEC. I own a homestead with enough solar to take care of our electrical needs as well as an electric vehicle. And we also own a 5-unit affordable housing unit in Plainfield Village, and that also has solar on the roof. The group net metering, as David was talking about, is just something that I don't know who came up with the idea. Perhaps it was the utilities because it doesn't fit into their economics program, but it just doesn't work. We have a small house that we purchased in the village that's probably a stone's throw away from our 5-unit place, which has a really nice garage in the back with a lot of solar room on the roof. Wouldn't it be ideal to be able to group net meter between those two locations and be able to give the tenants that we have a break on their power? So I just can't quite understand how this ever got in there. And it doesn't take a lot to get it out of there, I would think. And that would be my recommendation to get it going. And down the road, the town of Plainfield at this point has a solar array, 9.9 kilowatts, which I managed to get some grant money for. We were one of the last of these special projects where we were able to get a little tax, got an incentive off the price of it because we're not a taxpayer as a town entity. So we have at the Park and Ride in Plainfield, 9.9 kW array. The only consumption at that site is perhaps over the past, since 2015, maybe 287 kilowatt hours to run the inverter. So the power generated there goes to the municipal building. It goes to the firehouse. It goes to the town garage. It goes to the vehicle charging place at the Mill Street Park. So your new plan here, new and improved, is going to shoot that out of the water. That's not right. And to tell us that we have to scramble and get a project going. I'm working with MERP, which is the Municipal Energy Resilience Project, and to get through the grants, find where the money is, get a plan, get a prospect in 8 months before the January 1st deadline. That's just crazy. It can't get done. So I hope that we can find a way to get that out of there and move on and let it work. And I'm not trying to cut the teeth out of the utility companies, but when they talk about how they have grid problems, there's also a lot to be said about distributed energy being produced on site, near a site, not far away from a site, that eliminates them having to put in massive power lines to take it to a central grid location and then pipe it back out. It just doesn't work that way.
Sure. So it sounds like the provision that allows for co-location, co-located generation is not, it doesn't address some of the situations you're interested in addressing.
Yeah, that wouldn't work in Plainfield. We have another site that's up, it's on School Street behind the old schoolhouse that the town owns. There's right-of-way access to it, and it was the second dairy location when we put in the first one at the Park and Ride. But, it won't work. We've had a landowner say, I'd like to give you this old pasture to put some solar in so we could have a community solar project. That, I understand you're trying to work out a clause to allow that, but that's, as it's written now, isn't gonna fly either. So
Have you doing so
Go ahead.
many? Have you investigated any doing these projects through a PPA instead of through net metering?
Yeah, that can happen too. In fact, the town septic plant is an off-taker from a project that Green Lantern developed. So that's working okay for them, and they're the highest consumptor in town, so that's a good score. But for, an ordinary citizen, they like to be able to say, maybe you ride a mile and say, grandkids, look at that. I own some of those solar panels. That's where, my vehicle is being charged. That's where my lights are coming from. That's where my heat pump is operating from. And ordinary citizens can buy into this without having the complications of having to have 3 accountants and 2 bankers and 4 insurance people, to put something into place. A couple more points if there's no questions on group net metering. One is I strongly urge you to think about siting and giving biomass carte blanche to be renewable or green. It is just not. This is one of those things where if we don't burn one thing, we're going to burn the other. And we need to keep putting stuff into the atmosphere now. Just now, yesterday, whenever we can do it, as soon as we can do it. The siting argument links into the biomass because we don't need to be cutting down our forests. We have a good amount of 100-year-old trees here that probably came from the flooding of 29 or after we started to grow trees back and after the clear cutting for agriculture back in the 20s and 30s. And now these trees are mature and doing carbon sequestration. You don't have to pay them. You don't have to permit them. They're just there and doing it. So let's leave them in place and figure out how to get around it. Demand side needs a lot of strength. Weatherization. Becca has been working with me in the past on this, and we know that it works. And it's one of the least sexy, but the lowest cost things that you can do to help somebody out. Giving them a more comfortable environment, giving them a healthier environment, and giving them an economic boost because they're not paying so much for fuel or being held at mercy by the fossil fuel death project.
Sure.
So
I think we agree with you on that one. A couple of years ago, we were able to steer in roughly $120 million into weatherization
mhm.
on an ongoing basis, but we're gonna. It's
Hopefully there's some more.
no one ever objected to putting more insulation in your attic.
Yeah,
No neighbors yet have a field.
yeah. And it's not high cost and it works, Anyway, there's hard work to be done. We acknowledge that. And, you know, it's incentivizing renewables, you know, when the demand side could be much easier to do. The siting is just stop and think before we decide to use prime forest land, prime ag land. We've got these mega malls sitting out there and maybe even lining the perimeter of their parking lot. You don't have to build expensive carport infrastructure, but put it on their roofs. You know, National Life has done that for a long time and it works just fine. They're not rotating and maximizing the intake that a tracker would, but they're doing a good job of it. So I'm going to wind it down here. You know, I think of a couple of people that have been important to me. One was Robert Frost, talking about the path least taken. May not be the most popular one, but it might be the one that just if you turned over a few more stones, you might find out there is something to be had down that pathway. And my one from my dad, who said, remember the man who was taking such very large steps to save his $20 shoes that he split his $40 pants. So just remember that, you know, the haste makes waste kind of thing. And I thank you for your time. If you have any questions, I would be glad to follow up. And, you know, we should be a team that's working together here.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you
Thank you
very
much.
much. We're gonna go on to Ms. Watson, who's with us here in the room. Thank you, Mr. Atchison.
You're welcome. Good to see you all.
You see you.
Thanks for having me. My name is Mia Watson. I represent Vermont Housing Finance Agency. We're a statewide funder of affordable homes for low and moderate income households. I represented VHFA on the Renewable Energy Standard Working Group this fall, and with many of you, and had the opportunity to speak about H289 to the House Committee on Environment and Energy. The utilities and environmental advocates on the RES Working Group and legislators have done a really commendable job balancing ambitious climate goals with the impact to ratepayers and service reliability. Building new renewables, including solar, is going to be an important part of the state's strategy under the new RES. And to that end, I want to echo Senator Bray's enthusiasm for the $62 million in change that was just announced that Vermont will receive under the Solar for All program. This is a really phenomenal opportunity to expand access to solar resources for low and moderate income households who have had very little solar adoption to date. I'd like to clarify some confusion over some testimony on Friday related to Solar for All. Vermont's application for the Solar for All program from EPA has 3 different programs. One is an expansion of the existing ACRE program, which is a community solar program that's run through the utilities. There's a single family on-site homeownership program that will be offered through credit unions, and a third program for affordable housing projects. VHFA collaborated with the Public Service Department on that program design, and we hope to receive a substantial sub-grant once the dust settles on these awards. I've submitted the Department's Solar for All proposal to the committee assistants. You can read it for yourselves if you want to go through all of that.
Okay.
Yep. So the proposal confirms that an affordable housing program will include both on-site installation and community projects whose benefits are delivered to residents of affordable housing. We're confident that there are other pathways to serving those community projects at lower than current net metered rates that can work. And we're really looking forward to exploring this with utilities and the Public Service Department over the summer. However, affordable housers are still really concerned that the rates under such a program are going to make those projects pencil out and work to meet affordable housers' needs and to give benefits to the residents of affordable housing. There are also potential challenges if utilities want larger scale projects for efficiencies, which could be harder for our smaller housing developers to finance or provide enough off-takers to accommodate a larger project. For instance, we have recent projects in Morrisville in the village center, including a new all-electric building. It's a true downtown building, and there's not much space for rooftop solar. I'm not sure whether a utility like Morrisville Water and Light Department could accommodate a larger community project in its territory, or there'd be enough participating buildings to provide the off-takers. And if not, you could have an example of projects like that one, that all electric building, not being able to receive solar for all funds in a way that makes economic sense. So we anticipate challenges like this could occur in other small communities around the state. So in essence, we're really just looking for flexibility in terms of how to figure out projects like this. Affordable housing developers like Kathy Byer, who heard from last week, and housing funders like DHFA and DHCD are really in the process of grappling with these issues. And the larger challenge of electrifying our buildings and reducing our carbon impact without raising costs and further restraining really limited housing resources. We're really excited to be part of the climate solution and to provide clean energy opportunities for our residents and really take advantage of the resources offered under RES. But we're very much still in the process of learning how to leverage solar for all and other inflation reduction resources as they come online. It's a really exciting problem to have, but we're definitely building the plane as we fly it. It's just really difficult timing to restrict tools like community solar, just as we have the funding to finally pursue them at a larger scale, which we've been prevented from in the past. We really appreciate the efforts of the House Committee to draft a successor program in H289 that could offer an alternative pathway for community projects for affordable housing. Because we really do believe such a project would work. It's just really having that certainty to make sure that we're going to be able to deploy these resources efficiently and provide opportunities for affordable housing. So we feel it's really important that the legislature be prepared to look at that potential solution in January to make sure it meets all our equity goals and really maximizes leverage on these federal resources.
Community participated at all there was also under ARPA funds. 10 million got set aside roughly to losing impact of sessions, it's moving a lot of money year after year. I think it's 2 years ago, we did a grant to be administered through the department, $10 million for community-based solar. Have you participated in any projects that have drawn on that fund? I think they have only expended one of the 10 million so far, maybe on a, and there's, anyway, so let me just stop there.
Is that the ACRE program or am I?
Yeah.
thinking of something else? So that would be run through utilities, not offer a bill credit, so housing funders haven't had a direct role in that.
Right, any questions from Ms. Watson? Anyway,
Thank you. I was gonna say Sarah Watson. Sarah Watson actually had pointed out the section of the bill on page 4 that would extend, that right now lists all the systems potentially with an adjacent parcel. It's those in 2024, and then the addition, the affordable housing being 2025. Last time when Ms. Byer was here, she suggested, I believe, pushing out both of those dates. Are you still testifying that that is the request? And I don't wanna, if I'm mischaracterizing what her request was, I apologize. I think that was what her original request was of us. Is that still what you're testifying to?
Well, certainly, I wouldn't oppose it. More time is better. I think we're really trying to get to yes on this and work with partners to find a solution that works for everyone, which we're confident exists. I think it's just making sure that, we get this extended date, hopefully a study will be completed before then, but then if there is a tariff arrangement or something else that has to work its way through the PUC. I think this is something that, in January, we'll be able to say, is an agreement coming along? Have we been able to come up with something that works for everyone or not? And just making sure that we remember that this is an issue to make sure there's no funding gap.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
any other questions from Ms. Watson? All right,
Okay, thanks for having me.
thanks so much for, sorry that we had to do the rescheduling thing.
That's okay, thank you.
Thank you for coming back. So I think council has been streaming our testimony, so she could continue to draft while we were working. And I'm expecting that door to open any moment. Our lawyer will walk through it. So why don't we take a 3-minute break? We have been sitting for an hour. And then by then our lawyers will be in the room and we'll
This is my relaxed.
Okay.
Thank
Right, thank you very much.
It's largely supports what David was just talking about.
Stitch big
Okay.
finger, by the way.
Oh,
Thank you, Steve.
Okay.
Yeah. H, 3 messages. Right. Thank you, Mr. Kowski, for coming back. So I think we left off on page 25. That sound right to you?
I was gonna say 0.6, but
Well,
if you want to start at page 25, we can.
that's right, sure, because the section started and things that been into the middle of, the section 6.
Section 6. Ella Tchaikovsky, Office of Legislative Counsel. Page 289 has passed the House, we're still doing the walkthrough. So on page 26, starting with section 6, this is the section that updates the net metering rules. So this is the directive to the commission for what needs to be in the net metering rules. So first, on page 26, it's striking out some of the language regarding all customers who want to participate have the opportunity to do so, because you're putting a limitation on the group net metering systems. Next, on page 27, so on an entirely different topic related to net metering. So subsection H establishes what's supposed to happen with the net metering credits. So there's new language being added down on line 11. So the customers have the option to retain their net metering credits. But if they transfer them to their utility, they get an extra incentive potentially, depending on the program, but they have this option of whether or not they're going to transfer them. And so in subsection Romanet little I2, it says that if a customer transfers the attributes to the internet connecting provider, requires the provider to retain for their application towards compliance with the RES, unless the provider has fewer than 75,000 customers, in which case the attributes do not need to be applied towards compliance obligations under the RES.
Do we have, was there testimony from the smaller DUs that they currently engage in rec sales, or that they anticipate they might need that ability? Can you, I mean, it's for small utilities, so,
Yes, this is a change.
yeah,
They currently are not allowed to sell these recs, I believe.
right, if you're, that we recs need to be retained. I just wondered if it was that they're anticipating having a surplus for it, or they're interested in rent arbitrage, or what the motivation is for the provision.
I don't recall honestly specifically, but overall, a lot of the package allows flexibility for the utilities to prevent as much rate increase as possible.
Yeah, right. Thank you.
And if a retail electricity provider that is 100% renewable does not retire the RECs, requires the provider to apply an equivalent amount of attributes from distributed renewable generation that qualifies under tier 2 towards its compliance obligations. So 100% utilities, if they do not retire the RECs, they have to backfill with comparable distributed renewable generation RECs.
Or on tier 2.
Well, that would qualify under tier 2.
Okay, just 5 megawatts minus.
Small, local, new. So on page 28. Roman I is being repealed. This is the provisions where the commission has had the ability to set differing rate amounts. And they have never used this provision, so they're striking it as extraneous. Next, on page 29. So still in net metering, and this is in the existing net metering system, so this is regarding what's called net metering 1.0. So the amount of excess generation as defined in the commission's rules from existing.
Interrupt. I was gonna ask you that, so that, I just want to be reminded of what the significance of January 1, 2017 was. That's net metering 1.0, so called 1.0. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think that coincides with when so net metering existed prior to the RES, and so that I think coincides with the update for the RES. Although actually maybe not, I'll just say this is when the shift to 2.0 happened.
And this changed it so that basically Rex couldn't be double counted. It's the main change in 2017.
I don't. I think the compensation structure changed. So the amount of excess generation as defined in the commission's rules from existing net metering systems may be applied to reduce the provider statutory requirements under tier 2 for a provider with fewer than 75,000 customers, not including one that is 100% renewable. And the new tier 5, which is the load growth criteria tier for a provider that is 100% renewable. So this is allowing the net metering 1.0 credits to count for the tier 2 requirements and then the load growth requirement. At the bottom of the page, this is striking reference to establishing a simplified review process for group net metering systems. And then on page 30. So on page 30, all of subsection B is being struck, and this is the reporting requirements related to net metering. And these requirements are being moved into a single reporting section.
It's part of the CEP.
Yes.
Yeah.
So on page 31, section 7 is updating the state comprehensive energy plan to incorporate the reporting requirements from the renewable energy standard and from the net metering requirements that were just on that last page. And so there's some changes on page 31. First, in developing or updating the plan's recommendations, the Department of Public Service shall seek public comment by holding public hearings in at least 5 different geographic regions of the state on at least 3 different dates and providing and maintaining notice. On to page 32, on the department's website for at least 21 days before the day of each hearing, and providing and maintaining reasonable notice consistent with best practices for public engagement.
So this phrase, reasonable practices for best public engagement, is a new one to me. But I can see some pretty dated references up above, for instance, from our public radios and my Facebook television. So is this the term of art or a catch-all description for, we know there's going to be evolving ways that we say to the public, and we're just gonna say they shall be consistent with best practices?
I think that is the intent.
And
I
is-
have used this phrase before.
Okay, and then for me, it begs the question of like, well, how are they defined? Who defines them? How does someone know what that means? And I'm guessing someone from a government operations committee might have an idea about BMPs for public engagement or something like that.
I mean,
Is that why your hand went up?
well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I was actually gonna pull out, we got the environmental justice best practices for public engagement, like their handout there, and
Yeah.
I can see it out of the corner of my eye because they gave it to us in paper form. So I'm wondering if that is what it's referring to, because I know that we have, that is a whole body of
Right.
work.
Yeah.
I could even grab it to see if that's the language they use, but I don't think we have like it doesn't seem to be a standard sentence that we've used.
I mean, it's like, for me, I'm like fine with the language as it is. I don't want to
Yeah.
try to define such a thing. But I could imagine that if every single department defines these kind of things for themselves, it might have to be as the most efficient way to go.
Yeah, exactly. Core principles of community
Yeah.
engagement.
Cinema.
Thank you, it reminds me of other bills that we have looked at, I think maybe even last year about type 4 public hearings or something, right, where, well, there's certain.
Right, there's like 5 different types.
Yeah.
Notice and comment at ANR.
Exactly, but we otherwise don't, because we actually just did this with the tax abatement bill where we had to specify what all were the steps and notice, so no, the answer is
All right, so for the
long way of saying.
meeting, I'm happy to just note that something's happening, let's keep up with best practices and.
It'd be great if someone was reviewing this tape many years from now, thinking about legislative intent, that many of us are very interested in environmental justice principles as they relate to community engagement. It's the same.
Agree. We spent a large chunk of a session writing to each of you. Okay. Onward with the walkthrough.
And they have to include an internet address where more information can be found. At the bottom of page 32, it's updating the reference because the name of the House committee has changed. On page 33. It's adding some requirement for the sector report. So for the electricity sector, the report shall state the amounts in megawatt hours of retail sales and load for Vermont, as well as for each retail electricity provider. And the Vermont and New England summer and winter peak electric demand, including the hour day peak demand. At the bottom of that page, it's adding some additional language, so recommendations for policies to further the renewable energy requirements and goals set forth in statute and the plan, along with evaluation of the relative cost effectiveness and equity related impacts of different policy approaches.
I think that's one of a number of equity oriented
Yes.
edits to the board that comes in this section.
On page 34, it's striking a supplemental analysis because it's just an analysis. It's also changing the reference to statutory energy goals to energy requirements. And then at the bottom of page 34, it's striking reporting on the small hydropower systems program, the Vermont Village Green program, and the Vermont Fuel Efficiency Fund. And then it's replacing it with the references, and I'll read through this, the reporting on the renewable energy standard and then metering.
Okay, so on the things that are struck, it's because we're not running those programs, they're embedded someplace else.
No. So those, all three of those were actually recently moved to the state comprehensive energy plan because there is minimal, if any, activity in them. At least in the village energy and the small hydro systems. I'm not really sure what's going on with the fuel efficiency fund reference there. I suspect that because there's reporting requirements on fuel efficiency fund from multiple other programs that's covered in that. So the state comprehensive energy plan shall include the following information on progress towards meeting the renewable energy standard. And so this is almost the same language, but it's not nearly identical. That is currently in statute elsewhere. So an assessment of the costs and benefits of the RAs based on the most current available data, including rate and economic impacts, customer savings, technology deployment, greenhouse gas emission reductions achieved, both relative to 10 VSA 578 requirements and societally, fuel price stability, effect on transmission and distribution upgrade costs, and any recommended changes based on this assessment. For the most recent calendar year for which data is available, each retail electricity provider's retail sales and load in megawatt hours, required amounts of renewable energy for each category RES as set forth in section 8005 of the title. And the amounts of renewable energy and tradable renewable energy credits eligible to satisfy the requirements of the RES actually owned by the Vermont retail electricity providers, expressed as a percentage of retail sales and total load. The report shall summarize the energy transformation projects undertaken pursuant to 8005, their costs and benefits, their avoided fossil fuel consumption and greenhouse gas emissions, and its applicable energy savings. The report shall summarize statewide progress towards achieving the categories of the RES. On to page 36. The report shall assess how costs and benefits of the RES are being distributed across the state to the extent possible given available data by retail electricity service territory, municipality, and environmental justice focused population as defined in Previous A 6002. Such an assessment shall consider metrics to monitor affordability of electric rates. Projections looking at least 10 years ahead of the impacts of the RES. The department shall consider at least 3 scenarios based on high, mid-range, and low energy price forecasts. The department shall provide an opportunity for public comment on the model during its development and make the model and associated documents available on the department's website. The department shall project for the state the impact of the RES in each of the following areas: electric utility rates, total energy consumption, electric energy consumption, fossil fuel consumption, and greenhouse gas emissions. The report shall compare the amount or level in each of these areas with and without the program. An assessment of whether the requirements of the RES have been met to date, and any recommended changes needed to achieve those requirements. On page 37, a summary of the activities of distributed renewable generation programs that support the achievement of the RES, including standard offer program under 8005A of this title, including the number of plants participating in the program, the prices paid by the program, and the plant capacity and average annual energy generation of participating plants. The report shall present this information as totals of all participating plants and by categories of renewable energy technology. The report shall also identify the number of applications received, the number of participating plants under contract, and the number of participating plants actually in service. The net metering program.
That's a quick question. Mr. Poor is away, so we don't have him with us at the moment. Do you happen to know if there's still unawarded capacity in that standard offer?
We don't, it's showing.
She's.
Oh, I thought she was.
I think there's also contracts that get awarded and then if they nothing's built, they revert and they can be rebid. But I don't know how close to 127.5 we are. Thank you.
Line 11, the net metering program, including the current pace of net metering deployment, both statewide and within the service territory of each retail electricity provider, the ownership and transfer of the environmental attributes of energy generated by net metering systems, and of any associated tradable recs, and any other information relevant to the costs and benefits of net metering. The report shall include any recommendations for statutory change. Include any recommendations for statutory change related to sections 8004, 8005, 8050, 8005A, 8010, and 8011.
I forgot to go online and look, 10 and 11 are what, please?
Net metering. And storage. Wait,
Storage, okay.
I think it's storage. Yeah, because 10 was what we were just talking about. Yeah, 8010 is what we were just talking about for net metering.
Yeah.
No, I'm pretty sure storage. Yes, it's energy storage.
Thank you.
So here's the new language. For the report due in 2029, the commission shall issue a report on whether it is reasonable to expect that there will be sufficient new regional renewable resources available for a retail electricity provider with 75,000 or more customers to meet the requirements under the subdivision A or B 1(4) of this title at or below the alternative compliance rate for the new renewable energy generation category of 8,005 during the year beginning on January 1, 2032, or during the years beginning on January 1, 2033, or 2034. The commission shall not be required to issue this report in a contested case under 3 VSA Chapter 25, but shall conduct a proceeding on the issue with opportunities for participation by the retail electricity providers, Vermont Public Power Supply Authority, Renewable Energy Vermont, and other members of the public. Notwithstanding the timelines specified in subdivision E1 of this section, the commission shall file its annual report on or before December 15th, 2028. During the preparation of reports under this section, the department shall provide an opportunity for public to submit relevant information and recommendations. So this merged 8005B, and it also this struck language from the net metering section.
So that very long string at the top there in line 1 of 38, so that's the new tier 4, that's the regional renewable generation tier.
Yeah.
B is required amounts. Row of I is for retail electricity, because fewer than 75,000 customers or more. And then sub 4 is the 20% by 2035. So the plan is if there is enough capacity out there to be acquired for them.
There's corresponding language on page 14 that matches this, or is supposed to match this.
Yes, okay, thank you.
And then section 8 is a report. So on before January 15th, 2025, the department, after consultation with the PUC, VHFA, VHCB, Evernorth, Green Mountain Power, Vermont Electric Co-op, VIPS, and other electric utilities that wish to participate, and the Office of Racial Equity shall submit a report to the House Committee on Environment and Energy and the Senate Committee on Natural Resources and Energy. The goal of this report is to develop a replacement program for group net metering to reduce operating costs, reduce resident energy burdens, and encourage electrification and decarbonization of buildings, and enhance the financial capacity of housing providers to electrify the buildings developed or rehabilitated and provide relief to residents of manufactured home communities from their energy burdens. The report shall discuss and prioritize recommendations for replacement programs based on how they would impact Vermont's impacted and frontline communities, and identify opportunities for these communities to benefit from investments in renewables to adapt to climate and economic change within the framework of a replacement of the net metering program. Discuss current programs electric utilities have in place to serve income eligible customers, the number of participants in those programs, and their trends over time. Discuss progress affordable housing funders and developers have made to date in connecting projects with solar resources, as well as any barriers to this, and the comparison of availability and cost of net metered installations on single family dwelling units. On to page 40. List funding sources available for solar and other energy related projects benefiting affordable housing and customers with low income, including if it is federal or time limited. Propose comparable successor programs to group net metering for connecting affordable housing developments and income eligible residents of manufactured home communities. With solar projects in order to reduce operating costs, reduce resident energy burdens, and encourage electrification and decarbonization of buildings. Programs that meet the intent of this section shall include the following. A process to bring additional solar or other renewable energy projects online that could be owned by affordable housing developers. A process to enroll eligible customers, including property owners and qualified rental units. And if connecting directly to customers, a bill credit process to allocate a customer's kilowatt hour solar share on a monthly basis.
Certainly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and just on this section sparked a question for me, which is. So the way that we're removing group net metering now, when you're not in a butter. Or an invasive property. My understanding is the reason this section of the proposal is in there is in part to respond to that. But I had not thought about it before, but a mobile home park, that's one property typically. So it technically, if the mobile home park was adjacent to like a field or something, everyone in that mobile home park could participate still, or each of those individual lots technically that like only the people next to the field are considered in a butter. Cause I don't know how that works typically with mobile home parks, but.
Yeah, I think I don't know the answer. There seems like that. My impression is there's a variety of ways in which people own or lease the site that they're on. In mobile home parks.
Okay. But we're not okay. That would be a loss. But I appreciate the report. Okay, thank you.
Sure, Tom?
In listening to what's in here. There are provision after provision, which I don't understand. The provisions that follow one another create, winners and losers and options or cut options off. And I don't understand what we're cutting off or what we're enhancing. When I hear it read aloud, but each one of them is put in there to make a policy change or to give someone a leg up on someone else.
All right. Well,
Things like they won't do the report if there's a contested case going on, what?
No, they don't have to develop the report through the process of a contested case.
Which means,
They can just do a study. And they have some people that they're supposed to consult with, but they don't, because they're the PUC, they often hold contested cases that are formal and have procedural steps. But this is a report, so they don't have to go through that process.
I mean,
so
overall,
this is stating aloud what is already in statute.
This is creating a new provision, so the PUC was interested in having it be clear that it wasn't to be a contested case.
I mean, in terms of the complexity of the overall reshaping of the RES. Karen Watson was also the working group, so you might characterize it a different way. Which the goal was, I think, in general, bring more renewables online and increase the percentage of renewable energy on the grid generally. And then because we have such different electric companies to use out there, the conversation, particularly after, as we wound down the working with the conversation that kept going, that led to the House bill that that we're looking at now, and that was, separating out different actors by different categories of how much power, how many customers, and the different dates for them to bring on different versions of renewable. So we have like tier 4, like low growth renewable, and regional renewable, which we didn't used to define. And then we also didn't have low growth renewables, like, okay, one thing you talk about the load we have now, but we're also talking about growing that load, we hope, through electrification of thermal and transportation load. So that brought on another whole level of conversation about, well, how are you gonna serve that and what are the stresses it, so. There are a lot of details in here, my way, if someone said, why so many different slices and so many different conditions, I think it was because we're not talking about just the current load, we're talking about a growing load, and we're also talking about 18 different DUs participating in the same structure. The regs got more nuance, kind of like tax code.
So Chair, if I were working to put this bill together, create. And you had terms like load growth. Which is replacing, forget what it's replacing.
Retail sales.
Pardon? Retail sales. This creates a winner and a loser. When you switch the way you. Count stuff, someone's winning and someone's losing, and I don't understand. In the definitions. Who the winners and the losers are, and what responsibility do we have to understand who's, getting thrown overboard and who's being welcomed aboard the trial?
Getting piped aboard, are we talking specifically now about the switch from retail sales to load?
Well, so that's an example of. Someone who thinks the switch is important, but do we know why it's important? As we craft a law that's gonna make it happen or not happen?
Yeah.
Do we know?
I
I don't know, I couldn't.
Sure, I mean, I'll take a whack at it, Senator Watson was there, I mean, the other committee members probably have experience with it. I'll start from Mr. Poor's sort of bottom line absurdist example. If you only talked about retail sales, you could claim 100% renewable, but you'd actually be buying in power that was not clean power. And because you have power plant power, you have transmission and distribution line losses. So you have to buy more than you actually bill for, right? So the idea was, okay, obligate every utility to basically go to clean power for the entire amount that they have to buy for sort of big accounting. You pointed out that if you have larger transmission losses, then load is gonna have a differential impact on you than you don't have much in the way of transmission losses. But I suppose, so Washington Electric is gonna be really different than Global Foundry.
They're global foundries, that's different shipping costs.
Sure. But that's also part of why there are a number of provisions where the smaller utilities and the munis and the co-ops have different timelines for amounts on what they're obligated to do.
So I guess my question is, are we expected or should we know who the winners and losers are? Or have we asked the Suffolk Study Committee who would learn that stuff to come back and make it so we didn't have to worry our heads with that sort of thing? And they made a recommendation that would be best for all involved.
Well, I have some of an answer, but I don't want to monopolize. Senator Watson, do you want to jump in? You are on the work group.
Well, I would love to clarify whether you are asking about the switch from retail sales to load. Or about the new tier that is proposed around load growth. Because I think there are two different things. Cause the load, like switching from retail sales to load it's just a more, it's just a different, I would say more holistic accounting. Which holds and for, please correct me if I'm wrong about any of this, but which holds the utilities accountable for like the renewability of the electricity on slightly broader view, which I think is a good thing. And then the load growth as a new tier, right? So you're familiar with like the tier 1, 2, and 3 is they exist, but this is proposing tier 4 and a tier 5. And I forget which tier is which now, but one of them is load growth, and so that's like projecting into the future, how much what are the obligations that a utility has as their current load grows, because we do need to electrify everything. And so we anticipate that load will grow. So what are the obligations around that, especially for those distribution utilities that are already at 100% renewable?
So we're. So you trying to make this, seeking to say, we've been working on this stuff all summer and. Since the working group got put together and they make changes and. We don't need to know exactly what the changes are because they've been thoroughly vetted or what?
Well, to be fair,
Sorry?
this proposal actually did not come out of the working group exactly. It came out of we said, please keep working together, all stakeholders. And this is what they came up with. So or many of them came up. So I don't know if that's, so it's not that we have worked it all out in the committee. We did work out some of the things, you know, for example, that we pretty well established that we did not want more nuclear. That was a pretty bright line that came through.
I understand. Yeah.
Okay.
It's
So-
a choice, you recommend it, yeah.
Right, and I do think, you know, that as an example, I think there were some decisions made that helped us, that helped steer the conversation that happened after that, since that people could see what was palatable. I feel like I'm talking too much now.
Well,
So-
no, I mean, I think the Chair McDonald, I'm guessing, tell me if I'm off in my. That there are nuances in here that the diligent part of you says, I'd like to know all the ups and downs in terms of like each of these different provisions, you know, like how do they have a differential impact on one sort of DU versus another, things like that, and I get it, there's a great deal of fine tuning in this compared to the original res, because we added 2 new categories, and then one of the things that really that came through strongly in that working group is when we started the res, you were here for it in this room 9 years ago, that we gave the smaller utilities like an extra 2 years to get going, because the bigger utilities had staffs, they've been thinking about it, but they were kind of readier, if you will. And that was about the only differentiation, but as this thing has operated now 9 years, 7 years. The utilities themselves have said, well, some of these things are harder for us to do than other utilities, or we have utilities 3 that are already 100% renewable. They're saying, well, what are you gonna do to us when we've already exceeded the goal that you were aspiring for others to get to? And I think that's why there are new categories like the regional category.
Well,
But it was one size does not fit all. That was what I'm.
So the utilities that exceeded the growth, et cetera, were 100%. When it came here and the solution was presented, I understood it.
Sure.
I don't understand this. And I'm saying, what is the way, how are we functioning in this business differently, that it's okay for us not to understand stuff?
Well,
And to just. Cause others are telling us that it's that everything's okay.
well, no one in the room, I think, is asking you to just say, oh, everything's okay. Don't bother to, you know, we're not asking you to overlook your due diligence responsibility. We have counsel and we've scheduled time. We have another hour plus. If that's not enough time to answer.
In 15 minutes.
You started at 1.
1 to 3, you said.
3, oh, sorry, I'm always thinking 3-hour block. So we can ask questions now, if we need more time, we can find a way to find.
I don't feel I know if it was a job responsibility and then you make it notice to the people you know or your friends or you each, we come up with different ways to do stuff as opposed to what's the best policy.
Okay, well, so let me sort of stick that in and think about it some more. Senator, let me ask people if. One of the concerns I have about timeliness is that. And tomorrow particularly, we might lose almost our entire committee session to.
Oh, I understand that.
I mean, it's possible to meet.
I wanna-
4.
I wanna respect people like Senator Watson, who has spent hours on the group that put together what's being recommended. And the analysis they put into it that I don't understand.
Okay.
And has suggested changes that would be good that I don't understand.
Happy to chat.
Senator McCormick,
I could use a tutorial.
I go back to the discussion in Killington, goodness knows, 2 decades ago. Where they were argued over the energy of how to heat the places. And the Department of Public Service went in and said, no more of these radiator heaters in these buildings. And the builders said, well, you're gonna drive up the cost of these buildings. You know, we're building these things economically, which they were. They just weren't heating them economically. They were, you know, the heating costs went through the roof, but when you built the thing, it was. You could sell it for a lot of money with knowing that you weren't responsible for the heat that's going to be generated and poles and wires would have to be installed to heat places that were open 36, 48 hours a week in the wintertime. And and the policy was changed, much to the annoyance of certain people and it created efficiency Vermont. So the germination of that program. But I don't understand what's going on here, and I'm not gonna take any more time, because I
sure, I think that also flowed through to the Act 250, where there's an energy efficiency requirement. So let me check 2 things. One, do people have the opportunity to stay a little longer today while we're here so that we can ask questions and get answers?
I'd really prefer a timeline for
Yeah.
when we would go longer.
Yeah, my mistake. I honestly, when I came in, I was thinking, 1 to 4. I hadn't looked at because I always think about booking basically a 3-hour block. That's on me.
So we can expect to be done by 4.
But if we can members of the committee stay till 4, that way we have, 75 minutes to have Q&A with council to work through any open questions and details. I don't know if council can stay
I have a 3:30.
at 3:30.
Yeah, I just need to make a quick phone call, if that's okay, if I'm gonna stay past.
Sure, so how about for the moment, we'll add the half hour that we have council. And let's jump in and ask questions. So, Don, do you have a question you want to go for, or Senator McCormick? He's been asking for.
I was just gonna say, I could use a tutorial as well, but also when you mentioned Killington. Years ago, Killington, for expansion, wanted to use electrically powered chairlifts. And we insisted that they not. Because electric meant nuclear. And
meant new poles and wires from across the mountain to get to Hill.
so
And
anyway,
everyone else would
so anyway, at our insistence, they use kerosene.
Alright, so
It was probably the biggest mistake I ever made in public service.
Senator and I, Watson and I were on that, the working group, so how about if we tee up some sort of background, and then let's, if you have specific questions, I mean, that's the only thing we can really resolve. To work with council, the next 45 minutes. So you know the basic contours of the program, right? Like one way to clean up the supply, we have a regulated utility sector, we're gonna create obligations for them to fulfill. We started out with 3 tiers, and then when we looked at it, as the program had grown, we were making progress, but we also wanted to get to 100% sooner. But that pressure to get to 100% sooner also gave concern to utilities about cost. And we're all coming back to cost, right? 202A talks about safety, reliability, and cost, as well as environmental impacts. So then, in all the conversations that happened summer and fall and flowed into the House, they said, well, let's look at not only the system we have now, but the system we're looking to build. One that's 100% renewable, that's the ultimate answer, I think, to equity issues, right? No matter who you are, where you are, you throw a switch, it's clean power. And probably the lowest cost possible. Then the other thing was, well, we're also going to load. So how are we going to manage that? And then even within those people, they said, well, we're already 100% renewable, so how are we going to live in this system? And that's what led to the 5 tiers. And within each of those, the old tier of the old renewable standard was 10% more, now it becomes 20%. And then we have some different flavors of that as we go into tiers 4 or 5. So that's kind of like the highest, biggest picture. I don't know, Senator Watson, you want to throw anything in terms of like just baseline information?
Well, just to flesh out the new tiers that are proposed, right? So one is around new renewables, which I think is also regional, has a regional component, and then the other one is about load growth. So, you know, for those, particularly for those utilities that are already at 100%, it's really about like where do they go from here, and what are they required to do, and the new basically regional renewables is, you know, would allow for things that can be put onto the New England grid, so they don't have to be super local, but they have to be in the area. So, and it's helpful to have that, because ultimately we know we're governed by ISO New England, and you know, when we want to be driving down the carbon in the whole system, and we're part of that whole system.
There's also that, and here's where Mr. Kowski can too far better than I can. We can't just set a goal for in-state generation that then it ends up triggering a commerce clause or problem where we're preferring local generation over generation from outside the state, and so that's another reason for that sort of regional perspective on purchasing clean power.
I'm sorry, that, well, so that was completely wasted on me, I'm sorry. But in an analogy,
Yeah.
why I can't use computers. If I put it at a scale that I can read, you know, with glasses, it's not an eyesight problem.
Yeah.
If I put it on a scale that I can read it, I have absolutely no idea what I'm looking at. It's, if I pull back to a larger scale, then I say, okay, I guess where I was looking at is someplace over there, but I can't read because I'm all too far back. I need to know, first of all, what the big idea is before I get into the details of how the big idea works and how the problems with the big, with that, and the little parts of the big, I need the big idea, I need, you know, it's a good way to teach something, you know.
Yeah. Our council had an idea to share, so I'll amend Senator White.
Sure, the climate action plan did recommend that the RES get to 100% renewable to require all of the utilities to have 100% renewable energy in their portfolio. So then, there was a summer study committee to work on that. And after the summer study committee, a group of stakeholders, including all of the utilities and the environmental advocates, sat down and said, okay, in order to get to 100% renewable, it's going to cost the utilities more money. What other pieces of the RES system can be tweaked to balance out, to lower their costs elsewhere so that they won't put too much rate pressure on them immediately? So other pieces of the system were moved so that all of them would get to 100% at a date by which the utilities were comfortable it wouldn't completely distort their rates.
And that's what this is all designed to do.
Yes.
And why does that involve? Putting a cap or a limit on it?
On community what?
Was community solar.
So that, I think, is a misnomer, because community solar is a different program. So what's happening here is a limitation on virtual net metering systems, these that are not located next to where the generation is being used. And the reason that is happening is because it's some of the most expensive electricity that is being generated. So the utilities asked for limitation on that.
And you say that it's community interest, how the finances are organized, not where the collectives are. Well, you said it's not next to,
So
well, you said not next to, I took that to mean you don't have physical proximity.
right, so that is part of what is being proposed here, yes, it needs to be located adjacent to or on the same site as where it's being used. Community solar is a different type of program that could still exist.
Right, and I would, so between the 10 million that we did in the AFER program. And the 62 that has arrived, there will be other ways to bring. And, you know, also the report. To address the desire to do more, particularly for, to address energy burden populations. Is in the report to be written by the department, delivered by with plus stakeholders. By the beginning of next session, so that when next session starts, they'll have a running start on. Figuring out a successor program. Or a modified program. Sarah, I'm sorry, thanks for the reminder going to a much higher level, all the way back to the climate council. And the climate action plan, that's where, I forget that was officially spelled out there. You're right.
Sure, so thanks, Chair Bright. Senator McCormick and I have met with constituents many times on this exact topic, and they have major concerns with the removal of net metering and virtual net metering, which linguistically has just been called community solar in our area. So that's not a good thing, because that's not what that means, but that is what people have been called it. Because those can be different things, but I think what has kind of happened in this room at least is that we have two folks who have a lot of institutional knowledge about the process of development of renewable energy in our state. And we've only had, so there's tons of background history and knowledge, but very little time has been spent on this actual bill. So the changes are hard to understand, especially since we've had extreme pressure from different external sources who have given us competing realities on what the bill is doing. So that is all to say, this is not an easy yes vote for me. In fact, I would prefer, based on the lack of change we were able to do in this bill, to vote no. However, I do think that the compromises that were made on the House side and throughout the study process are moving us in the right direction. So I am disappointed with where the bill has landed. I'm ultimately happy to vote yes, because I think it does move us forward. However, if we have members of the committee who don't feel comfortable voting yes for the bill, today, I think that we should maybe have a pause and have a larger conversation. But I don't know if that's the way people are feeling, because if there are changes that would be made that would help people. That's a different story than like generally, we just didn't have enough time to discuss it, which I think. Those are kind of two different conversations, so I don't know if there's changes that. Would bring either of you two along, or if it's just kind of the general. Understanding of, whoa, we took this bill up in 2 days. With massive amounts of information shared to us by constituents over the last few months. And no ability to make any of the changes that they recommended because of the timeline. So that's a tough reality to live in and to vote yes for, but I'm at this point. Willing to vote yes for it in committee, but if there were ways to make changes, I think that that would be also a way to bring along more support. And I don't think a no vote on this would signal a disagreement with the larger direction that we need to go.
So one way, I respect that people have different. Senses where they are on. The bill overall and aspects of the bill. And one way, if people want to officially, record where they are on the provision. Like the metering provisions, we can draw a whole section of the bill.
Okay.
And then let people record where we are. When we go to bill out, it's the bill itself as a whole, and that's a little different, so I'm trying to find a path that respects people's different positions on the bill or pieces of the bill, but also perform the task that we're asked to perform on behalf of the Senate, but this is vet the bill and bring it to our colleagues. So there, if I were. I'm trying to think, the council, maybe we can help find
Is it
Terms of-
before, is that
well, I don't know.
the dates that I'm most.
just looking at. How we would sort of point at a section, but it might be more than one section. That relates to the sort of net metering provisions. And ask your committee, individual committee members, Mr. Alford, where you are on the aspects of the bill.
It says in section 2 primarily, but also in section 6.
So. And can you remind me, in section 2, do we have? We have the definition of group net metering. And I think that's where the co-location provision comes in. As well as. Okay, so. There's co-location. And then in section 6, which is what page?
26. 27. So section 6 deals with multiple aspects of net metering. And here it references a few different. It strikes a few references to group net metering.
Sure.
Okay, so the substantive change is happening in section 2, but in section 6 is striking some references to group net metering. Which would be in the net metering statute.
Right, so there's, okay, so on page 2, we're changing the definition. On page 4, we're changing the details of the dates and the co-location environment gets spelled out. Okay, so that for those with, then can you remind us of what's up in section 6 on page 23?
Yeah, so it strikes a few references to group net metering. It does other things also.
So I think the next question is, the members of the committee. Just as, well, we're not voting a bill that way, but I do want to find a way for people to speak to the issue, and that is, why don't we just straw poll and say, who supports the language in these two that relates to group net metering in sections 2 and in section 6 in the bill as currently drafted, and who supports?
Who supports?
Yeah, so I get usually say who supports, so let's do it that way, we'll say. If you support those provisions. You would say aye. Whatever you're interested in.
Does that include the cutting off December 2024 versus 2025?
Sure. Yeah, those dates are, that's where they are,
Will we have a study company
yes.
that's gonna be done in 2025? And meanwhile, we're shutting the spigot until the study comes in? Is that what this would do?
Yes, so after the end of this, you need a project.
Stop that metering now and then we'll find out whether we shouldn't have stopped it later?
Kurt will reply through, overall through December 31 of 2024. Thereafter, you need to be generating on site or an adjacent development for projects generally. If you're also serving a building containing qualified rental units serving low income tenants, then that date is a year out further, December 1, 2025. January of 25, the next legislature comes back and has a report about how to address providing renewable generation to this population of folks that I guess, when I say it, they have built to higher energy burdens, lower income.
So to expand our renewable energy production, we're gonna halt one of the things that produces renewable energy until we find out more about it.
Yeah, you could say, if you want to say it that way. Sure. Not gonna talk you out of it, so go ahead and say it that way.
Yeah,
I need
that's
to-
one way.
I need to know, clear, and what is the problem this fixes?
What is the problem?
Yeah, what is the problem that this provision fixes?
Over net metering is expensive.
Why is it expensive?
Because if you can go by, so there's a subtle math question beyond the capacity of this committee at this moment, and it's been under discussion for years. And we have looked at the value of net metered power in more than one bill and more than one time. But if I were to say, in general, people would, if you look at the ability to go buy energy plus environmental attributes, RECs, you can do it wholesale at a lower cost than you can do it through net metering. And because utilities, anyone who disagrees, flag me down. Utilities are obligated to accept all net metered power. They say you are, in essence, forcing us to buy power at a rate higher than we could find clean energy elsewhere to supply to a customer. And the more we do that, the more we drive cost into the system. So utilities, not surprisingly, because they don't want to be raising rates, and I would say, as a state, we don't want to be raising rates either, because we're trying to take out more electric load. The higher the rates go, the less attractive the total climate heat pump proposition becomes, the EV proposition becomes. So they said, let's stop requiring the purchases. Let's acknowledge the fact that we want to find a cost-effective way to serve those very populations. And some people would say, don't, I'll stop right there, because otherwise we could get into a more and more nuanced discussion, but I think that's probably pretty fair.
And I appreciate the effort to be out of here on May 10th. Move back. Quick fashion, but I'm really reluctant to vote for a bill, and I'm not convinced it's a good idea. I could be convinced, but we're gonna have to take the time to convince.
And
I'm gonna require that, or I'm gonna just vote no. Okay, and I could vote yes, but what does a person do? A homeowner, let's just say a hypothetical home, who lives on a wooded northern slope, who wants to use solar. where does that person go? How does that person get sold?
Well, the utilities would say that they're developing a program that will help that happen. That is, if, I believe that that's the point that they're trying to make, and that they could do it at a lower cost than the way developers do it, and I know that developers disagree with that. But that is kind of the argument that has been created, is my understanding.
Sure.
And that whether or not that's accurate, I think only the test of time can really tell.
Shall I quote Paul Simon yet again?
Pocket full of
A
mumble.
pocket full of mumbles, set your promises.
Right. Well, right, so we're,
Sorry.
yeah, you know what, so I think another way to think about this is for that person on a northern wooded slope.
Yeah.
There's no condition on God's green earth that makes them a good site for solar, right? So
Right.
it may be that they want to concentrate on reducing their energy footprint in another way, use something that's appropriate for their site, for their situation.
Well, someone out there is to got solar and they're selling it, no, they want to buy into that.
There will be ways to buy into projects.
The excellent example you gave about the northern part of the slope.
Yeah.
Yet at the same time, we authorize on the northern part of the roof.
Mhm.
And in the same bill, we don't apply the same rationale to one as we do to another. Now, how does that happen?
How does that happen? I don't think we have as best I know, the kinds of decisions about how much solar it's worth putting on what part of a roof are things that pencil out between a contractor and a homeowner.
No, that they pencil out because it's permitted. People will put it in stupid places if it's permitted.
Well, that would be an expensive choice if the capacity
Yeah.
factor were declining to zero. I don't know that I would make that investment, but maybe somebody would. I mean, there's federal tax credits.
To make the investment if you have tax credits and incentives to put it in a stupid place. Kathy Byers was in here. And wanted to generate electricity in the property across the street. And she's prohibited by the rules doing it. Because it's not the same parcel. Yet, if you own 500 acres. You can ship it 10 times the distance that Kathy Byers wanted to ship it. And that's okay. How does that happen? Who's made that rule? Us?
I don't think you spend enough time with eighth graders, so you can think of an endless series of hypotheticals that will sort of, deflate everything we talk about. It's a problem. I can't.
Eighth graders were a healthy influence.
I know, they see through every possible rule somehow. They've been really great at training.
But we. Sometimes those happen by accident, but we discussed that and said, yeah, that's okay, we're gonna do it.
Okay, well, so I'm gonna back up another step and say, in Vermont, at the moment, we have the cleanest grid in the US because of the REDS. Now, you might want to put a little Sammy Sosa asterisk on cleanest.
Yeah.
Right? Scales of REDS.
But obviously, this is causing problems. It's we have to
The-
read it in.
But the point is, it's a program that's having positive impact. We looked at a chart of amount of solar generation in Vermont compared to every other New England state. Vermont was, I think, a head and shoulder above our neighboring states. So my sense is that although there are imperfections in the current system, we've been actually making some important progress. Because if we're gonna talk about heat pump and EVs, if it's not a clean grid behind it, it's kidding themselves. So my sense is that the current res gets us to a cleaner grid and sooner. And this bill And then that's worth doing. I get it that there is some discomfort about changing a provision on group net meter projects that are not co-located.
Yes.
And I also say when having been there for the creation of this stuff, people didn't necessarily say, oh, group net metering is gonna be the way we're gonna. Net metering is gonna be the way that we're gonna address every desire to bring clean power to every person. It was originally, remember, spin your meter backwards. And then we stretched it.
Being able to put it in a
further.
bank and take it out. when you need
Yeah,
it.
then we stretch it further and further to take on more and more kinds of projects. Now, I think people are saying, we're looking for a more mature system that addresses those costs in a more sound manner, that's all I can say.
Those are adjectives.
Okay. There, Watson.
What is the more?
This might not be helpful, but I figured I'd add it to.
What's going on right now? I sort of go,
Yeah, so I have the ISO New England app on my phone because
you
like nerd out like that kind of thing. And so even though we have a clean asterisk
Yeah.
grid in Vermont, right now, 30% of our electricity is coming from natural gas. That's the light blue portion. It's usually more than that. It's usually more like 50 or 60%. And I would just wager a guess that one of the reasons that it's down at 30% right now is because it's a beautiful day out and we're getting a lot of renewable energy right now. And
we must be net exporters.
we could be, and so right now we're getting 20% from renewables. So the more renewables that are in New England in general, including in Vermont, the more that green bar grows and specifically will likely cut into that blue bar of the natural gas. Reducing our carbon emissions,
It's the contract
In
with
general.
natural gas 24/7 or peak demand contract.
well, my guess, so I don't know, to be fair, but all I know is that normally it's around, the natural gas is usually around 50% or 60%, and that's roughly, the combined numbers of natural gas and renewables right now. So the more renewables we have, the less natural gas we'll need in New England. So my North Star, as I've said before, is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, right? To reduce carbon in general. And that, for me, means that we need our grid to be cleaner, and this is a way to do that. And specifically, it's about looking regionally, it's about the new contracts that we're about to have, but that's expensive. And so, of course, we could just say, let's go the expensive route and go more renewables, but then all the distribution utilities would be in here screening. And so there's some provisions in here, like the virtual group net metering provision, to try to help create the compromise so that the distribution utilities are not in here, opposing this.
We need to compromise, the pencil has to work.
Yes.
Okay, there.
Oh, well, okay. Well, and what I mean is that, and as Alan said before, to keep the rates low enough. So because new renewables is more expensive, how are we keeping it cheap?
The other thing is on that, that's a not
More
ISO
expensive,
picture.
except when it's cheaper.
I think it might be, well, I don't want to speculate.
I engage at the point at which you said, therefore, we need to increase the amount of renewables.
Yeah.
Okay, everything up to then. I'm not sure what the word is. It's often referred to as mansplaining.
Well, you can't be.
Okay, but I actually kind of know that, all right? And I would have hoped that my colleagues presumed that.
But there.
Where I engage is I engage with the question, okay, why is this the way we do? Why is this the way we can increase the renewables? I don't see that this does that, maybe it does, and maybe I'm missing it, and I'm all ears. A year ago, I expressed some confusion about a bill. And the guys monitoring us up in
Yeah.
Northeast Kingdom. But all of that, totally out of context on the internet. Then, I said, I don't understand. Look at that, they're voting for bills I don't understand. The process, you don't understand. The only stupid question is the one you don't ask. If you don't understand, you say, I don't understand, please help me understand. And that's what I'm doing here. Okay, I don't understand how this bill gets us going.
So part of what, besides that picture, which is totally accurate for ISO as a whole, is that Vermont utilities themselves would look much cleaner at this particular moment if you had a snapshot of their portfolio. In part because the generation they have, in part because they acquire RECs that cover their clean generation obligations. So the trading of RECs allows
So long as you can't sell the same
fuels powered
Yeah.
generators in southern New England to purchase RECs as they're required by their law. And still run those fossil fuel plants. If they can offset, they're purchasing offsets from Vermont. But we start to hold more of the attributes in Vermont, they can't, there are fewer RECs available for them to purchase. And in a certain way obscure the real world impacts, greenhouse gas emissions of their system. So we're not only cleaning up our own generation. We're trying to address the asterisk in the room that lets REC sales obscure the real world impact of fossil fuel power generation, or whatever it is, 260 billion.
Connecticut?
If Connecticut buys Vermont RECs, it says, now we're not polluting, but they're running a plant full steam ahead that's polluting, then we're hitting ourselves, right? They said, oh, we're clean because we bought the RECs. We said, we're good, we had extra RECs, we sold them, whatever we did. So the idea is, in part, have cleaner generation in the whole region.
Don't get for the remote market, where. This is gonna. Have pastures and milk cows, they're gonna have us do it, they're gonna complain about the shipping costs.
Mr. Chair, if I count I think we're coming to a point where we will not have time to allow our colleagues to be as well informed as I think they would like to be on this bill, and I don't think that's a commentary on your leadership or the committee work, but rather where we are in a very tight timeline of a legislative session. And if I'm counting those correctly, I believe you at least have 3 votes in favor of the renewable energy standard as it's drafted. However, I do have concerns with the dates that we have in this bill.
Sure.
Those cannot be addressed, from my understanding, based on our timeline. If there was any way that we could change that, I would be even more vehement in my tests. But I do think it is unfortunate that we've got ourselves in this position, but from my understanding of the bill, I think we can explain to our constituents why it's positive, and I'm happy. I know Senator McCormick was very kind and asked me like 2 weeks ago to meet and actually help him go over it. I was not comfortable with the bill as it was drafted in the House. I haven't taken the time to help him fully understand this, and as we kind of have, he explained Act 250 to me, so I kind of owed him on the red stuff. So that's my fault. So I'm happy to speak to this if we have constituents who want to talk to us, because it is extremely dense. And your area of expertise has been land use for the last 30+ years, so.
Well,
So I'm a yes on this. I think you would have the votes in committee, and I would be happy if there was a way to move an amendment or to do something on those dates. I would be grateful to do it, but I also respect it might not be.
so
I'd like to look at the date of the 24th to the 25th, so that what's going on today, which is progress, continues until the study comes back with a recommended better thing to do, as opposed to shutting it down and having the people that are part of the system that or builds its renewable energy, drift off to take jobs elsewhere, and then have to start from. You know,
Scratch, yeah,
their
there,
retreat and fill the ranks again before trying to move forward.
so,
So I'd like that to be a proposed amendment at offered at the time that you think would be most appropriate.
okay, but we would have to have language drafted to be.
Use it, right, the digits five. The base four, and you put in you can even replace it instead. You know, two halves instead of four.
Okay, so are you? Making a motion? To amend?
I make a motion to amend now, or if you wanted to do them all at once, and
Well, I think
The next-
one way to do this, with preserving everyone's right to amend, I don't wanna. I'm not trying to stiff arm anyone into anything, I'm trying to steer us to get our work done in a way that we've been asked. To stick to a schedule on behalf of our colleagues. We could vote the two things I'd like to offer, one is straw poll it's sort of a prequel to what you're saying. Straw poll the provisions that relate to the dates that we were just talking about. Vote the bill. Consider an amendment once we move a bill that can then be, brought forward, but. So that, you could, the problem is,
Can we concur with amendment?
yeah, I know, I was gonna say, well, you can concur with further proposal.
Yeah. Why can't we do that? Does that mess up the timeline?
Yes, because if we, so to be completely clear about calendars, if we do anything other than concur, the bill has to travel through the rest of the Senate, back to the House. And then it's gonna go notice, committee, review, action, like, we will lose an opportunity to pass a bill this session, I believe. Because we've also, it's for a frank conversation then, there's also been a concern, I think well-founded, the
Yeah.
bill could face a veto.
Yeah.
When you live in a situation where I think we could be up for a 13th, 14th veto, it constrains every action we take in this room because we don't have the calendar that the normal parliamentary process envisions. We are always short time by virtue of having to be able to address a possible veto. And that's, I think that's just the reality of where we are. Like, we don't have as much time.
it's not fair, we're going.
Exactly, that's the way I guess I would say, like, we don't have the normal process in terms of time to make adjustments, and I don't like the situation we're in. But for me, this is like 15/16 of a loaf. And not just half, and I don't like this sort of thing. I said, if it's crossing the stream, you could get wet. I'd rather have had in place the plan for post virtual net metering. But that's not the way
Mr. Chair,
it came to.
we're speculating on what will happen, but I moved that we strike 2025. 2024 and replace it with 2025, and have an extra year. Want to do a straw poll and where people be on that or whatever.
Yeah.
Is most. You figure move this along in an orderly manner, I'm gonna go along with it, I'd like that to happen.
Okay, great. I think probably a straw poll is a way to go, be where they are on that aspect of the bill. And then I'd like to just move on to a vote on the bill. So for those who support the provisions, the bill as it is in front of us, as it relates to virtual net metering provisions, please, indicate.
I wanted, my motion is to change the date,
So, all right, so let's straw poll it that way. Senator McDonald's, question is, who supports changing the date? Yeah, please.
If this was a straw poll, I would say yes. If this was a motion to amend, I would say no.
That's the tough part, yeah.
Exactly, I mean, there's an important difference here, so. I was proposing a straw poll before, if people say, no, I want an actual firm binding vote on something. So Senator McConnell, you're the mover of the motion, which.
Want to have a firm binding vote on that issue, so. I move we change the date for 20, I make a motion to change the date. 24 to 25. Finish.
For me, the question of whether to do it now or do it later presumes that we're going to do it.
Yeah.
We'll be,
I'm not sure I'd like to do it at all, so,
or there'll be finder.
I'm not with you yet.
Okay.
So you're coming from the further side.
Yeah.
Intriguing.
Maybe later.
And that may, okay, that's.
Okay, so you're stressful.
Pardon me?
I think you're stressful.
Well, I want people to, and that's lawful, I'd like people to be able to just say clearly where they are, so that we can acknowledge that. Then I'd like to go to acting on the bill as a whole. The one we have in front of it. So for those who would like to change, how about this, we'll phrase it as, anyone who would like to see the dates changed, straw poll.
Yes.
Please indicate by saying aye or put your hand up. Okay, so that was 1, 2, 3.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so what if you're on 2, 4?
Oh.
Okay, so that's.
Right, someone else put up. The, Kathy Myers over across the street and gets some renewable power. If it's next door, instead of buying a parcel. Next thing you know, be the Champion Lands, can do whatever it wants in the Champion Lands, because that was one part.
Well, so for the case, I get it,
I got one, so it's not.
all right, no, well, I don't wanna ignore it. In the case of Kathy Byers, there is another 1.5 years of that, the operation of that program. And if they can pull or wait or either on the property or adjacent property, then it can move as well. Meanwhile, there's a report in January to try to address what some people see as a gap in what's available for folks.
So look back and lost, it's not good.
Right.
Just.
So that, I would, but, and it's 3:30 and we're leaving council, I welcome a motion on the bill.
Sure. I move that we concur with the Alice Pass version H280.
Senator Watkins put a motion on the table to concur with H289 as passed by the House. Further discussion?
Then I offered to amend the bill, and there was 3 votes to do it, but they're not 3 votes.
Yes, because the chair, so here's where we're at. The chair asked for a straw poll.
Yeah, okay. Oh,
I mean, I want a way for people to report where their position is for others to. And
you're in charge, you're doing your job.
yeah, and now I'm saying, okay, acknowledging that there's a clear interest in amending them. However, we have the bill as it is in front of us.
Acknowledging that there's what kind of interest?
Acknowledging that 4 people would like to change
I
that.
would like to amend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
If you wanna vote on that.
so
I
there,
voted no on the straw.
Yeah.
But now as we're getting to the bill
yeah,
of actually taking action,
yes,
and I think the bill is going to pass. And it's going to have a provision in it that I disapprove of. But if it's gonna happen, I would rather it happen later sooner. So I will wait for it.
Yes.
Okay, so the motion before us is to concur with H 289. And is there any further discussion? Okay, so hearing none, I ask the clerk to call roll.
McDonald. McCormick.
No,
Watson.
Yes.
White. Yes. Bright, Chair Bright.
Yes.
The vote is 4-1-0.
So. Committee. It's reminding me of being at Outward Bound. Not every day in the boat was a great day, but the experience over the course of a month was a great
We're
month.
still in the boat.
What's that?
We're still in the boat.
So with that is it for today's work. I really appreciate people coming in on a Monday, we've had many extra meetings and I really can't say enough about people's willingness to come in when we're normally not here. So we are here.
Thank you, Mark. I think that was the right vote. Yeah, maybe not.
I'm actually going to.
I mean, I'm happy to, because I looked at other places, because there are like where the presenting bases are from tier, from the other tiers, right? So like every tier sort of ratchets down, and that's why, you know, the percentage is increased for every tier. But, and I can point.
somebody, I did.
Okay. Okay. So, and I can point out where here that's happening, but I was unsure between Mark, what level was the right level, so. So my apologies, but
The house.
find all of the instances, there are many instances of like, where the amount of energy required, all the numbers are they're the number of in like every situation.
I want you to know.
Would it be the of required would that be if we outline
Changed.
like all the places where requirements are being ratcheted up that helpful? Yeah, like in terms of chart.
Yes, you know, right, but I want you to feel.
Okay.
We talked tomorrow.
Yes, well,
And I will see by anytime we're in a town meeting.
What's that?
I will happily, if you still be my Act 250 guy, I'll be your renewable energy gal.
And did that. Very.
Like how much?
Oh, really?
Because
Whenever anyone offers to explain something to someone else, use it. It's often seen as sort of, I want you to mind, it's an element of the sort of fact. Then credit.
You're trying.
Very, I appreciate.
You also know a lot about this topic.
Yeah.
You know.
I
I don't think there was a way you could have run this. Yeah, you that actually. Jude, I think we're still live. I don't know if.
Oh, thank you. Yes, we are. I'm sorry. Actually,
Oh, that's all.
somebody who's.
One
It's
thought
okay.
that I have.
I just,
That
thank you
the
for the,
study
I'm accused of shutting it off.